Earlier this year, we saw the publication of what was, at the time, my most anticipated novel of this entire year, Butter by Azuko Yuzuki. This novel is a kind of pseudo-feminist work of Japanese crime fiction. It subverts a lot of feminist tropes and a lot of tropes of the crime genre, and ultimately, I was really disappointed by it. Like I said, it was my most anticipated book of the whole year, but it let me down in a lot of ways, and you can check out my review in case you're curious. Despite my own disappointment, however, Butter has been doing numbers. In the UK, it was originally published in paperback, but it did so well that a special hardcover edition came along, which you don't really see very often. It's kind of the reverse of doing things. But it happened because people really liked that book. But now, later in the year, we've got another feminist Japanese crime novel that's come along that I think is a lot better than Butter. And I'm kind of worried that people are going to ignore this thing and read Butter instead. So I'm here to tell you that this book might end up being a kind of underdog, and I really think it deserves a lot of attention and praise. I didn't actually go into this video planning to compare these two novels, but they are similar in a lot of ways, and Butter is going to be the more successful of the two, and that just kind of annoys me. So here I am, doing my part to tell you that you need to read First Love by Rio Shimamoto. This book was translated from the Japanese by Louise Heal Kawai and published in the UK by Honford Star. And First Love is absolutely terrific. If you enjoy Japanese fiction, if you enjoy feminist fiction, and if you enjoy courtroom drama style fiction, this is for you. First Love is told from the perspective of a clinical psychologist called Yuki Makabe. And like so many people, in the last few months, Yuki has been paying very, very close attention to an exciting murder case that has swept Japan. That is the case of Kanna Hijiriyama, a young woman who was at a job interview, suddenly left that interview, went to her father's place of work, which is a college, and murdered him in the women's bathroom with a knife. That's the story, that's the case, and now we are leading up to the day of the trial. And our first-person protagonist, Yuki, has been given the opportunity to write a book about this crime, about the case, about the trial, from a psychological perspective. And so this gives her the opportunity to get to know Kanna. Now, the blurb describes this book as part psychological drama and part legal thriller. It is, in fact, mostly the former, with the legal drama kind of building up toward the end because we know we're leading up to the day of the trial. For the most part, this is a very intriguing novel about the psyches of not only this one woman who may or may not have killed her father in cold blood, but also that of the psychologist herself and other women in modern day Japan. The feminist themes of this novel come out gradually bit by bit, and they are very, very well explored. As we dig into this crime, as we dig into Kanna's personal history, as we dig into Yuki's personal history, a kind of map of the social gender dynamics of modern day Japan gets pieced together bit by bit. As the novel goes on, it reveals itself as a very critical work exploring the treatment of women and young girls in society. And this is not only true of Japan, but the gender dynamics in the world at large. I cannot go into any specifics because that would give away so much of the crime, of the trial, of the characters' backstories, etc. Just know that the feminist themes reveal themselves slowly in a very satisfying way as we get to know these characters. But as I'm sure you'll agree, it is such an exciting setup right from the beginning. Why was this young woman compelled to leave a job interview, which by the way was at a TV broadcast center, and then head to her father's place of work and kill him? If that is indeed what happened, because that just seems too bizarre, and yet all evidence points to that being the case. So as Yuki gets to know her better, gets to understand her, and tries to draw the truth out of her, the picture becomes a far more detailed and complicated one. The only aspect to this book that I actually didn't enjoy that much was a middle section where we get to know Yuki in a lot more detail. See, one interesting aspect about the book is the fact that Yuki stumbled into this situation because her brother-in-law is in fact Kanna's legal defense. And so it's through him that all of this has happened. Halfway through the novel, and it's not a spoiler to tell you this, there is a large, chunky flashback to Yuki's time in college where she met her brother-in-law before meeting his brother, the man she'd eventually marry and have a kid with. And this chunk of the book, this flashback, it does feed into the themes of the book overall. It is arguably important when it comes to the feminist aspect of the book, but it is narratively uninteresting. The events of that time in college really didn't do much for me. Because this book is kind of a legal drama and you are intrigued by how it's going to end and what the truth of it all really is, that flashback does grind all of that to a halt. And while I said that this is more a character study, a psychological drama, we are still presented with a weird crime and we do want to know the truth of it. This enormous flashback just forces us, against our will, to sideline all of the interesting main plot stuff, travel back in time for a little while, focus on a thing that's not that interesting, and kind of go, okay, I do get why this is here, but I also don't want it to be here. That is the one aspect of the novel that I really didn't get along with. But apart from that, these are very sensitive characters, people that you really get to know, get to appreciate, and bond with in very unexpected ways. One of the most interesting things that you notice about Kanna right from the beginning is that she's anxious. She is riddled with anxiety. She is a young adult who is so defined by her own traumas. She probably has PTSD. And we need to understand why and where it came from and how that has anything to do with the events of the crime. We get to know Kanna's mother, who was not there at the moment of death. Nobody was, and that's important. But Kanna's mother does have an interesting take on her daughter and a position that she wants to take within the trial. And as I've said, this is a very feminist novel, and Kanna's mother is a very relatable person, very reflective of the kinds of women that feed into patriarchy, who willingly take part in patriarchal hierarchies. You can kind of see her as a traitor to her gender, but I won't go into why. You have to read the book to find out. See, all the way through the book, right from the beginning, Kanna lacks a lot of confidence. She considers herself to be a liar. She will say things and then say, oh no, that was in fact a lie. I wasn't telling the truth. Here's the real truth. And you immediately wonder, is that actually the case? Was she telling the truth before? Is she such a liar that she can't keep track of the truth? Or is she in fact so nervous that she worries about what she said and then tells everyone it was a lie and then says something she's more comfortable with, even if that in fact is a lie? And this isn't helped by the fact that her mother calls her a liar. Her father used to call her a liar. Why? Where has this come from? She tells Yuki, she tells us that she has been called a liar, that she has been a liar since a very young age. Is that true? Is it gaslighting? The fact that she's been called a liar means that can we trust her when she says she's a liar? It's a really, really well executed character study. And I really hope I have sold you on this book, because this year we've seen a feminist Japanese crime novel perform really well, get lots of sales, lots of attention, people really enjoyed it, blah blah blah. And I personally think that First Love is a better book that shares a lot of similarities, and I need people to not sleep on this thing. Go check out First Love. I haven't even gone into why it's called First Love. For a long time, that's kind of a weird title. You don't really understand why. The blurb teases that we'll get to know who Kanna's first love was, and that is true, but it takes a while to get there. This is a sad novel, potentially very triggering, and definitely anger-inducing. It filled me with a kind of righteous flame, as a lot of feminist novels tend to do. And in that way, it does hit a lot harder than something like Butter does. Butter is a little bit more palatable because it's fun and funny in a lot of places. First Love hits you harder, it's darker, it's sadder. It takes bigger risks, in my opinion. And I don't mean to compare these two books constantly, I'm just annoyed that one has seen so many sales, and I think this deserves more attention because it's a better book. It is deeper, it's more literary, it's more complex, it's more satisfying. So check it out. First Love is absolutely brilliant. If you've enjoyed this, you can support me on Patreon because this channel would not exist without my patrons. And if you want to be part of the reason that my channel exists at all, I'd really appreciate your support. Thank you in advance, and subscribe for books.